Welcome back, everybody, to another impactful episode of the PSTA podcast. Yes, you guessed it. We have our favorite guest so far in this podcast. Patrick Kelly. He just keeps showing up, so we're just going to keep allowing him to talk. Patrick, how you doing?
I'm good. You really need to expand your guest list, though. If I'm your favorite, this is a low bar, so I'm hoping for better guests for you.
Well, we have to give the people what they want. By your own admission and by you sharing those emails coming in that people are enjoying the podcast, I mean, that's
true.
Actual
that's
data
true.
from the membership. So we haven't got one from Alaska yet, though. So
no, we're still waiting. They're on a different time zone.
Still working on it. So shout out to, before we get started, shout out to Kershaw County School District Teacher Forum. They will be joining us for their annual Hill Day on Wednesday. So we're excited about having those teacher leaders with us. But last week, we wrapped up week 8 of the General Assembly legislative session. So, Patrick, how did it go?
It was an interesting week. It was none of the big headline grabber, attention grabber kind of bills. It was more of just a week of steady work on a lot of different things. There were some bills that were passed. Unfortunately, a couple bills that got paused. But we also have some things that are pending on the horizon that are really big for education. On the front of things that got passed last week, probably the most important is the Senate passed S-125, which would provide education majors in South Carolina with the same enhanced lottery scholarship currently afforded to math and science majors. PSTA knows from talking with our members, from talking with college students, talking with high school students, that this is a policy that can help with educator recruitment by incentivizing more high school kids to consider the profession. And it can also help with retention by minimizing the amount of student debt that our new teachers have. This is the third time the South Carolina Senate has passed this bill in the last 4 years. So now that it's made it to the House of Representatives so quickly, with the remainder of this year as well as all of next year if necessary to pass it, we're really hopeful. The House was also busy. The Education Committee passed several different bills. Two that are really important to us is one would create a statewide school safety center, and another would allow out-of-state school psychologists to practice and serve in South Carolina schools for up to 180 days while they're working on completing any additional certification requirements that our state may have that others don't. These are two bills that we have advocated for strongly in conjunction with the other 9 associations that are members of the South Carolina Coalition for Safer Schools. And so we appreciate the House of Representatives leadership really having a focus on school safety last week, and to see these bills get to the floor and hopefully over to the Senate soon is encouraging. That
is encouraging. And I think the House will be working on the budget fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, under the pending category, on March 13th, so next Monday, the House will take up the Ways and Means budget. This is a huge deal for education. Whether we're talking about teacher salaries, we're talking about instructional materials for students and everything in between. This is a significant kind of milestone in the budget process. The House will start on Monday. They could run through Thursday, just depending on how many different amendments and provisos are recommended and introduced. But this will give us an even clearer idea of what teachers might be looking at in terms of pay raises, what we might be looking at in terms of funding for different programs in schools. So that's something that educators should definitely keep their eyes on.
Absolutely. So I think we've had one of the 3 listening sessions from the teacher recruitment and retention task force that was held in the upstate. Yep. And we have 2 more coming up, I believe March 13th and March 20th, correct? Yeah, March 13th will be from 4:30 to 6:30 at Francis Marion University, and March 20th will be at the Blatt Building on the South Carolina State House grounds from 4:30 to 6:30. These are important opportunities for educators to bring their voice to the table and to inform policymakers. The session in Greenville was phenomenal. Huge shout out to the Greenville Teacher Forum, as well as Greenville Public Education Partners for really spearheading that work, as well as the support of the Greenville County school system. Superintendent Royster was there throughout, being supportive, and that was really encouraging. But that room was packed with passionate educators that for 2 full hours
shared feedback on the policies that are necessary to better recruit and retain teachers. Some really great points were made in areas like reducing the amount of burden on teachers with recertification, especially Read to Succeed. Paid parental leave got a lot of time and focus. Classroom discipline issues, class sizes, over testing. It's a list that if you're in a school, you probably can rattle off pretty quickly. But for those that aren't, I think it was really important for them to hear directly from teachers. And so I'm hopeful that we'll see the exact same thing at these next two listening sessions on the 13th and the 20th.
So it sounded like it was a solution-based experience as opposed to, as you mentioned before on a previous podcast, saying we have a teacher shortage.
That's right. It was overwhelmingly solution-based. People came with very specific proposals. Yes, there was a little bit of discussion of what was a challenge within somebody's classroom, but it was always in the context of here's the challenge, now here's the solution to it. It wasn't just a airing of concerns. It was always here's a concern and here's how we fix it. And people came with ideas. There was one teacher who came with 8 pages of proposals. And we couldn't get that in the amount of time that everyone was allocated for testimony, but they left the feedback, and that's all available to the teacher task force, and it's being reviewed. So again, bring your great ideas on the 13th and the 20th in Florence and in Columbia, and let state policymakers hear what needs to be done to address our teacher shortage.
And I think what our policymakers and members of the task force will hear, they will hear common themes for the remaining 2. They're going to hear parental leave. They're going to hear recertification issues, i.e. Read to Succeed. And that makes a difference. And we're very upfront and honest here at PSTA when we have an idea that was brought to the forefront by an educator. The lottery enhancement, as smart as Patrick, Kelly, and I are, we did not come up with that idea.
Not even close.
It was not even close. It was one of our members in Richland School District 2 who came to Kathy with that idea, and it was a great idea. And so we just encourage you to take part in these listening sessions if you're able to. If you can't, send your message by someone else that will attend. Patrick, before we end today, anything else you want to share with our membership?
I just think one other thing in the pending category for people to keep on their radar is next week a Senate Education Subcommittee is going to start review of H. 3728, the Transparency and Integrity in Education Act. This is the bill that the House of Representatives passed a few weeks ago that deal with issues of curriculum, instruction, what's prohibited, what's protected, processes. As we shared on a previous podcast, that bill was amended on the House floor in some really troublesome ways that would both inhibit instruction of state standards and create new unnecessary non-instructional burden on educators. So PSTA is going to be working hard on the Senate side of the equation to try to get those more troublesome issues removed from this bill. At minimum, that's what we hope to achieve. But I would really encourage listeners, whether you're an educator or not, pay attention to this bill, because this bill, as it was amended on the House floor, could fundamentally reshape in a not positive way instruction in South Carolina. And so I think it's really important for members of the Senate to hear from educators, but also from members of the public, from families, about some of the concerns that exist around these amendments that were added in the House, so we can make sure South Carolina students are getting the quality of education they deserve.
Great information, Patrick. And for our members out there that receive our weekly legislative alert networks and our emails, our 1-minute advocacy emails on Sunday, make sure you engage with your policymakers and make your voices heard, because it makes a difference. Thank you, Patrick, for your time today. We'll probably see you again next week.
I'll be there.
I know you'll be here. So everybody, thank you for tuning in for another impactful episode. Make sure you follow, share, download this episode, share it with your family and friends all over the state, even Alaska, and we'll see you next time. Take care.